So you found that perfect home in San Antonio. The finishes are great, it's in a great neighborhood, and the price seems pretty good. But there is a $50,000 mistake hiding in plain sight that could leave you financially trapped for years and years and years. What's crazy is I've seen the same scenario play out numerous times across San Antonio, and literally nobody talks about it. Most real estate agents that are giving advice on the internet like me are talking about, negotiating the best price, or, maybe waiting until the interest rates are a certain number. All these things are great and all, but there are specific things that we're going to talk about in this video that literally will cost you thousands and thousands of dollars if you're not paying attention to them. In this video, we are breaking down the number one mistake that home buyers make in San Antonio and 5 other hidden traps that you want to make sure you're paying attention to before you go and make this move to our great city. So we're going to get right into it. Let's not waste any time. The number one mistake, the biggest mistake that home buyers make in San Antonio is overpaying for new construction and new construction upgrades. I've seen this same pattern play out multiple times across San Antonio. There's so much new construction here that obviously there are some really, really great builders out there with really, really great model homes. And a lot of these builders will let you build on their lot. So a lot of people will go to these and see these model homes and say, you know what, I want exactly what's in this model home. And they will be stuck. They'll pay $50,000, $60,000 more than what that home would typically be worth just as its standard package, just so they can get some of those better finishes that they see that are so nice and shiny in this model home. But what this immediately causes you, even if you go and you get this appraisal done, they're going to give all the comps that they need to show how much this stuff costs versus the value and everything. You would think that appraisal would help you. Well, for that brand new house, it will. It'll help you get that mortgage. But you're talking spending $50,000, $60,000 more on these finishes, and things happen. You never know what's going to happen in your life. A year or two down the road, you need to go sell that house and you are way underwater based off of these finishes. A lot of these builders will also charge a premium for these upgrades. So whether it's, flooring or cabinets or countertops or plumbing fixtures or light fixtures, you go in there and you get these things added in. It makes sense to do it at the time so you don't have to worry about it. You get the exact perfect house that you want. But you have to understand that a lot of these builders, they will charge an exorbitant premium just for them putting it in versus what you might be able to get something similar for just doing it yourself after you move into the house with the basic finishes. So if you think about it, back during the pandemic in 2020 to 2022, interest rates were super low, 2.5% to 3.5%, even lower in some cases with VA loans. That monthly payment, adding on that $50,000, $60,000, it wasn't that big of a deal. Everybody was cool with it. But now, especially whenever you have interest rates at like 6.5%, that monthly payment goes up dramatically every little bit that you add onto that mortgage. And you got to think that adding all of these extras on top of the just base package of that house coming from this builder, you're not going to get that entire value out of those upgrades whenever you go to sell. And that is the worst thing that I've seen so many times here lately, especially in the market that we're in right now. It is a very buyer-friendly market. I wouldn't go as far as to say that it is a major buyer's market right now, because I'm still seeing sellers that are listing their houses and they're still getting multiple offers if they're priced well and they're, really, really good, clean houses. Also depends on the area. But there are a lot of people that are trying to sell these homes that they've only owned for a year or two at the most, and they put all these upgrades into them. They're way, way underwater. They try to list it for more than what the builders are even selling these houses for. And there is no way that somebody out there right now is going to pay that for your home. And so they're having to cut the price, and you start seeing $20,000 price cuts, $30,000. Oh, look, this person bought this house 3 years ago for $550,000. They have it listed for $500,000 right now because they are just trying everything they can to sell it because they had to move across the country for work. They had a family situation come up. They lost their job. That is the worst case scenario, and literally my nightmare as a real estate agent whenever I'm helping my clients, especially if they're looking into doing situations like this where they're adding all these upgrades with builds. I want to make sure they are planning to be in this house for the long run if they're going to spend this money on these upgrades, because there is something to be said for the convenience of these and making the home exactly what you want from the beginning. And now, I'm not saying to skip all those upgrades, but there are certain things. There's probably 2 separate categories that I would say to look at when you're doing these upgrades with the builders. So you start with the structural upgrades. That's moving walls. That's making a doorway. That's changing the layout of the bathroom if you want like a larger shower, or you want to add that bathtub if they don't typically add that as a standard feature. So there's things like that make sense to have the builder do 100%, because going in and doing those after the fact is going to be way more expensive. Sometimes even flooring, if you can get the right deal, flooring may be worth doing. Cabinets, countertops, those things, make your selections and you're in good shape. Light fixtures, going into this super high-end flooring, right? I mean, going from like carpet to, the tile, or carpet to the vinyl, that's different. Super high-end light fixtures, adding in ceiling fans, changing out the door hardware to a specific color, and it's an upgrade. Like, all those little things can actually add quite a bit to your mortgage, believe it or not, and to the overall price of the home. And those are well worth waiting and having a contractor do those, or do them yourself after you move into the home. Just kind of pay attention to all the warranties and everything, because if you have contractors that aren't part of the builder come in and start doing electrical work, doing plumbing work, certain builders are going to be real sticklers about that affecting those warranties. Now, this is just the beginning of the financial mistakes that buyers can make. We have many more things to talk about, and you're going to want to hear about some of these property tax hidden fees that come up, and because those can cost you a lot of money too, and really hurt people if they don't know they're there. By the way, if you are new to this channel, or you've been watching my videos for a while and are not yet subscribed yet, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Michael McCall. I'm with the Life at SATX Home Group here in San Antonio, Texas, and we've helped families just like you come from all over the country or moving and selling right here in San Antonio. And we talk about everything you need to know about San Antonio and all the ins and outs and what it means to be a San Antonian, and all the little things about all the different areas around here. So would love for you guys to subscribe if you have not already. And while doing these upgrades and spending tons and tons of money on these upgrades can be the number one biggest issue and biggest concern that I have for home buyers, there's a deal with property taxes that really shocks a lot of people that we need to talk about now. So imagine finding your dream home and calculating everything out for your monthly payment. This is before you even buy the house, okay? And then you realize that based off what you kind of estimate, property taxes are bad in Texas, but they're probably around, like 2% or so. But you go in and do that math, and then you go to actually do the math with your lender and find out you're going to be spending an extra $400, $500, $600,000 maybe a month more on property taxes for this house than you originally planned. Depending on the price point of the house, this is kind of what the situation is you could be in. So what most people don't understand is that Texas doesn't have state income tax. So for all those states that have state income tax, what they use that state income tax to pay for, we use property taxes to pay for. And in San Antonio specifically, you're looking at an average of like 2.3% property taxes, with a range in Bexar County of like 2 to 2.7%, which, considering the national average is 1.1%, we're over double that in certain situations. So when you look at the tax bill on a $450,000 house, people in Colorado, for instance, maybe their property taxes are like $3,500 a year or so, give or take. But whenever you get into San Antonio, you could be looking at $8,000 to $12,000 a year for that $450,000 house. So you're looking at potentially $1,000 a month just for your house in property taxes. And the worst part about that is there are exemptions, but the worst part about that is that these don't go away whenever you pay off your house, especially even if you're paying cash. You still have to pay your property taxes. So what you have to understand with the property taxes is that the majority of this is going to the public schools. San Antonio and the surrounding areas have some great public schools. And so these are being funded through the local property taxes. You're looking at about 60 to 70% of the overall property tax bill going towards the public schools in Texas, and that's anywhere in Texas, not just in the San Antonio area. So the first problem is just property taxes as a whole. The second problem, and probably the one that confuses people the most and what they don't really pay attention to, and if you don't have a good agent or don't have a good lender that's explaining these things to you, you may not understand it. But the MUD tax and like the PUD or the water improvement districts, like those little things, MUD stands for Municipal Utility District, Public Improvement District, same thing as like the water improvement district situation. But these are additional taxes for certain neighborhoods based off of the development that happens. So municipal utility districts, they typically have their own wastewater treatment facilities, maybe natural gas, all the water, and everything was done through this municipal utility district. And to pay for that, instead of coming directly from the developers and getting stuff from the city said, hey, we're not going to give you utilities for this neighborhood. You're going to have to do it on your own. So they levy a tax tax against the entire neighborhood to increase the property taxes in order to develop that area. Because, typically you're going to get the city and everything to come in and put the infrastructure in, because the utility bills and everything is what's going to pay that. Well, in these districts, these neighborhoods that have these mud taxes, they don't do that. They get the residents to pay for that. And then you still have to pay for your utility bills. This isn't an exception of the utility bills themselves. Some of these can be as high as almost a 1% additional property tax on top of the regular property taxes. So I know some municipal utility districts that are, up to like 2.6, 2.7, when the areas surrounding them are like 1.5%. So this can be a big, big difference. And especially for some of these new home construction communities, this is another thing that's a problem. The new home construction, some of these lenders, some of these builders will be giving you the property taxes based off of the current property tax rate and for property tax payment due on that house. If that house was just built this year, that tax value is based off of the lot alone. It's not even including the house. So you may look at your property taxes and be like, oh, my property taxes are only a few $1,000s a year. This is amazing on your $400,000 or $500,000 house. Wrong. That's not going to happen. As soon as the next year comes around, the county reassesses it with the house on it. Now you've got those $12,000 to $15,000 a year property taxes, and your payment goes up by $1,000 a month in a blink of an eye, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's because you weren't paying attention to it, your agent wasn't paying attention to it to tell you that, and your lender and the builder's rep didn't give you the full honest truth about what your payment was going to be, and using that value of what the house actually is worth and what you're paying for that house to calculate your property taxes. A lot of new people buying new construction, this happens too. Same thing with insurance. We can't get into all of that today, but the property taxes themselves is a huge thing to pay attention to. And while we're on the subject of specific neighborhoods, let's talk about the HOA. So for those of you guys coming from Florida or Vegas or California, the HOAs here are nothing compared to what you guys deal with. We're probably talking on average like maybe $400 to $600, $700, $800 a year total, and that's neighborhoods with amenities, pools, some of them with gates. The most that I typically see an HOA costing in this area outside of condo associations is like $2,000 a year, and that's for places like Cordillera Ranch and the Dominion, and that's just your typical HOA dues. That doesn't count any of the extra country club fees and all, golf course fees and all that stuff. But HOAs here are usually pretty lenient, but if you don't know that your neighborhood has an HOA, if you've never experienced that, or if you're a first-time home buyer, you're looking at, $100, a month on the top end, $50 to $100 a month that's adding onto your monthly payment. So keep that in mind whenever you're looking at your house. And now, if you want to know exactly what the property tax rate is for a house that you're looking at, one, you can reach out to me and I can kind of give you all the links and everything that you need for that. But you can also go to any of the appraisal district websites. So Kendall County for Bernie, Comal County for New Braunfels, Wolverine Spring Branch, even for northern parts of San Antonio, and then Bexar County, BEXAR for San Antonio. So those are the main counties kind of surrounding. You also got Guadalupe and Wilson County out on the east and southeast sides, and then Medina County out on the far west. So there's lots of counties. You just got to make sure you know what county the house is. You can go plug in that address and you'll be able to see what the property taxes are for your neighborhood for this house that you're looking at. Now, while property taxes and the high property taxes are a reality throughout Texas, there's something that's been a bit of a myth, and I've gotten a ton of questions, especially lately given what we dealt with this year, and that is regarding flood zones. So the myth is that San Antonio is a place that floods everywhere. When we have floods, it happens all over the place, right? It's not the case. A lot of people that I talk to are like, I want to make sure I'm in a neighborhood that is not in a flood zone. Great. They don't build neighborhoods in flood zones. So if you are in a relatively new development, you're not going to get a neighborhood that is built within a flood zone, right? The developers don't want that. They don't want to have to try to sell a house that's in a flood zone and get flood insurance and everything on that. That's a risk for them, and it makes it a lot more difficult to sell. So they will build around the flood zones. There are neighborhoods that have some low water areas, some dry creek beds, and they build kind of outside of those flood zones, or they will develop up higher to build up out and away from those flood zones, and then they'll get modifications from FEMA to show, hey, these elevations are different now, the flood zone is going to be different here, and so you don't have to really worry about that. And especially given what happened back in July, especially up in Kerrville, it's a big question and an honest question that you need to know about. There are areas that do flood. So we had some big floods that happened earlier this year in the heart of San Antonio. It was a tragic deal. Some people lost their lives, and it was really, really unfortunate. that was flooding on a roadway specifically. That's typically when you see problems with flooding and deaths and tragedy and everything that happens with flooding, most of the time it is due to flooding on roadways specifically. You'll see those flood gauges on the side of the road as you're driving through there. There's signs everywhere that say turn around, don't drown. If there's water over the road, it is not worth trying to make it across. You can save a few minutes or wait. You don't need to get where you need to go that bad. So that is a big thing that happens a lot. But as far as housing goes, very few homes are in flood zones. But if you do find a house that you love that is within a flood zone and you do have to get flood insurance, you need to pay attention to that. Flood insurance can add anywhere from, I want to say like $600 to $800 a year at a minimum, all the way up to $2,000+ a year for flood insurance. Now, that may not seem like a huge amount, but whenever you factor in, the fact that if a flood actually does happen, what that's going to cost you, even with flood insurance, it's well more than that if it comes down to it. Now, most of the places that you're going to need flood insurance for are going to be like waterfront properties. If you live or buy a house on any of those rivers, over in that Seguin, New Braunfels area, on the Guadalupe River over there, or, over on the north side and, kind of along that Canyon Lake and going towards Bernie area where the Guadalupe River runs up there, or along any of these creeks, Cibolo Creek floods quite frequently. It gets pretty full, and whenever it floods pretty crazily. But if you were living within a flood zone near there, those can be significant, and you got to really pay attention to it. Okay. The best way to check if this house that you're looking at is in the flood zone, you go to the FEMA website, and the FEMA website, you can plug in an address and it'll show you where this address falls within the flood zone map. You're going to have multiple different zones. You got Zone X, which is kind of the lowest risk, Zone A, Zone AE, which tend to be higher risk, and it specifies all that, whether it's a 500-year floodplain, 100-year floodplain, or so on. But it gives you a really good picture of where the flood maps are and where the flood risk is. Now, oddly enough, flood zones are not the biggest environmental impact that I think you should be worried about when buying a house here. San Antonio is Military City, USA, and if you buy a house near one of the military bases, a lot of Air Force bases in San Antonio. You got Lackland, you got Randolph. So expect to hear a lot of air traffic noise. And it's not just the bases either. If you buy over by the airport, of course, there's commercial planes going in and out of there 24/7. So the air traffic noise is something that you really need to be paying attention to. If you're coming from a more rural place, or maybe you're living outside of the city where you're at now and you're moving into the city to be closer to work or whatever, closer to family, it's not realizing that those jets flying over constantly is going to be a bothersome for you guys. It's a big thing because you can't do anything about it. That's location, right? And on top of that, the market impact is real. The homes that are within the flight path and kind of close to the bases or to the airport sell just on average like 2 to 4% lower than if that same exact house was just a little bit further away, but in the same kind of general area. So in the flight path with all of these different, airplane noises, it definitely affects the quality of life and the quality of the homes in the neighborhoods. And this leads into another tip that I tell everybody, if you can, and I highly recommend it, I highly recommend you visiting the areas before you decide to buy a home there. There are circumstances where I know that it is almost impossible, whether you can't afford it or you just don't have time to, but at the very least, get somebody that's coworker or, a friend or a relative to go with the agent or go with me out to these houses and look at the houses on your behalf. It's one thing I can go out there and take videos of these homes all day, take video of the neighborhood. It's great, looks great. You'll have a good feeling for that house in the neighborhood and you'll love that area. But you can't know what else is around there. I will tell you if it is in an area that is going to be prone to air traffic noise for sure. But if you're working with somebody else, you want to make sure that those things are up front and honest, and you want to make sure if that's a problem with you guys, you do not want to be in an area or in a house that's going to be super prone to that. Now, you can be really close to the bases and not have that big of a deal. As long as you're a little bit further out where you're not getting everything where it's getting super low, things coming overhead all the time, that's where the biggest problems lie. But if you're, a few miles down the road, you're going to hear it, but not so much when you're in the house, more so just when you're outside kind of doing your own thing. But that's bearable. If you're inside, especially if you're sleeping or just trying to relax after work, you don't want to deal with the noise all the time in the house. Another good tip would be to talk to the neighbors. I always recommend talking to the neighbors anyways. You'll get a good feel for what the neighborhood is like, and there's no one better to tell you than somebody who's actually living there. The seller of the house, they're going to tell you what you want to hear. They're trying to make that sale. The neighbors have no vested interest in you buying that house. They are more than likely going to be a lot more honest with you than the sellers of the home that you're trying to buy. Now, I already mentioned this one, but we're going to talk more in depth about it now, and that is buying a home before you visit the area. I have had many people do this over the years. I have no problems with it personally. If you've been to San Antonio, if you know the area, if you have family in the area that can kind of come take a look at the houses with you. If you've never been here in person, you need to find a way to get here. That is one of my biggest pieces of advice that I would have to say. I've had, unfortunately, a couple people over the years that have moved here and regretted it just because they never came here, whether it was the weather or, just the overall, feel of the city that they didn't love for whatever reason. There's all kinds of circumstances that can come up. If you don't see the city, see the neighborhood, see the town, feel the heat, that's a big one. Coming visit in the summer if you're coming from a place that's cooler and you've never dealt with heat before. All of those things are reasons to come and visit the city before you buy a home, because once you buy that house, if you move here and 3 months later you want to sell it, you're already going to be losing money. There's no way you can get that money back. You're going to be paying closing costs and everything else. You've already paid a lot of closing costs to buy the house. Even if you pay cash for it, it's going to be a tough situation for you guys. Now, even though I'm saying to visit the area, that doesn't mean you have to be here physically whenever we're looking at houses. As long as you've seen the area and kind of know which area of town you want to be in, I think that is more than good enough. I can't tell you the number of people. Like I said, I've had a few people that have moved here sight unseen. Several people loved it. Didn't end up being an issue. Couple ended up disliking it, ended up moving back where they came from. But the people that come here visit, we kind of meet up ahead of time while they're here visiting. Month, 2, 3 months later, they ended up buying their houses. Well, during that time, whenever we're looking at houses, that's whenever I can go out there and actually do the touring for them. Take the videos. You see everything that you would see in person in the video. I'll tell you everything that you need to know about those houses, show you the neighborhoods in the video. You get a good feel for it, and you understand if you're going to like that property or not. You don't necessarily have to be here for that part, but it's just mainly making sure that you know that San Antonio is a place that you want to be. A couple things you can do in that situation, especially if you're not here in that neighborhood and seeing that neighborhood or that house in person. Go to Facebook, look up the neighborhood Facebook groups, try to join those groups and talk to people in there. Look at the Google Street Views if it's not a gated neighborhood, and if there is one for that area, you can kind of see what the streets look like, what the houses in the neighborhood look like, if there's a lot of cars parked on the street constantly. So there's little things like that you can do to kind of get ahead of things where you wouldn't be able to see all of that stuff if you weren't there in person. Now, speaking of checking out things beforehand, our last tip that I'm going to give you guys today is something that almost nobody does anymore, but I have heard of several people doing it and regretting it greatly. So no matter if you are buying an existing home or a brand new construction house, I cannot say this enough. You have to get a inspection, and that is a general inspection at the minimum. You can get other contractors to go and look at it. You need to get that house checked out from top to bottom. I'll give you a good example. I had brand new construction homes, 2 of them in the same exact neighborhood, less than a month apart. This was this year, so very, very recently. Great builder, by the way. I'm not going to pick on the builder right now by calling them out, but I will tell you this happens more often than not. In these neighborhoods, especially big neighborhoods with lots of homes being built, they have different construction teams. These 2 houses were built by 2 completely separate construction teams, okay? Same builder, different construction teams. Same exact inspector, by the way. One house came back spotless, right? 3, 4 things that popped up on the inspection report. Very, very minor, all cosmetic things. Great experience overall. The builder went above and beyond. The other house, we found a hole in the roof. We found a toilet that was clogged, and it wasn't clogged. Like, there was a sewer line issue. There was cracks in the tile. There was a problem with the shingles on the roof itself. There were truss issues where there were split boards. There were AC issues where ventilation was missed. Like, you want to talk about just a huge thing, like all across the board. There was lots of issues with this house. And that is just a massive reason why you have to get an inspection on new construction homes. Okay, so the builder ended up going in and fixing everything the way they needed to be, and there was a couple things that came up with these same issues after closing, and the builder went in there and ended up fixing them the way that they needed to. So it all ended up working out fine, but this guy was just overworked. I think he was newer compared to the other guy, didn't have as much experience, so he wasn't looking at these things before he told us the house was ready for the inspection, because in my opinion, that house wasn't ready for the inspection. But But you can have these things happen, and I've heard of several people that have gotten into homes without getting an inspection done. Some builders reps will try to talk you out of it, say you have the warranties, just wait till you're 11 months and get to your 11-month inspection before the first year warranty is up. Never do that. You want to get that inspection done. Get those things fixed before you give them any of your money. That is the best way to do it. And if a builder is telling you you can't get a third-party inspection before you close on that house, there's a red flag for you. So keep in mind all of this stuff. And another big reason why you need to do this, a lot of people don't know this, but in Texas, if you are outside of the city limits, you do not require any code inspections done. There are no permits that are required to do all of these home building. Like, I'll tell you, for my house, when I built my house out of the city limits, the only inspection that I had to get on my house was for the septic tank. The county came out and inspected the septic tank was done correctly. There were 0 inspections outside of that. So some builders will say they get their own third-party inspections done. Never trust it. Always go with your own guy. But especially if they're out of the city limits, they're not even getting city inspections done to make sure they pass all the code and everything. So you need a third-party inspector to make sure that everything across the board is checked. And it goes into one final thing, kind of tying back into that first point. If you are building a home from dirt with one of these builders in these subdivisions, or even a custom builder, get a 3-phase inspection. That means you're getting inspected before the concrete is poured of everything that's roughed in the concrete, that's, the plumbing and the electrical that may be down there, make sure the foundation is done correctly, all that stuff. Get a pre-drywall inspection. So when the framing and everything is up, everything is still wide open before they put insulation in. They come in and check all the top out of everything, like making sure that all the plumbing's done right, the electrical, all the structure is done good, all of that jazz. And then final inspection after the entire house is done. Go back and check everything is working, AC is working, plumbing's working, hot water heater, roof looks good, like all that stuff. You need that 3-phase inspection if you are building a house. Couldn't recommend it more. It is well worth the $1,000 you're going to spend for that 3-phase inspection. And for the third-party inspection, $300 to $500 depending on who you use. Again, well worth it in my opinion. So recapping, guys, that number one mistake, don't overpay for those upgrades on that brand new house. I know they look really nice and pretty, but have some common sense with it. You never know what's going to happen. You do not want to be underwater as soon as you close on that house. Make sure you check the property taxes, look at the exact property tax rate for that house that you're buying, and make sure that builder and the builder's lender is giving you the accurate value of your property taxes for that brand new home. Check your HOA fees, make sure that you visit the area, and make sure you get that inspection. And don't worry too much about flood zones. Check FEMA for any flood zone issues that you may have concerns about. But if you want to just completely skip all of these things, guys, again, my name is Michael McCall. I'm a real estate agent here in San Antonio with the Life in San Antonio, Texas home group. Reach out to us. My information is down in the description. You can schedule a call with us at any point in time. That information is through, or you can schedule that call through that Calendly link down below. Just click it, pick a time that works for you guys, and we can have a good conversation about what you're looking at doing here in San Antonio, whether you're buying or selling your home here. And by the way, these are not the only mistakes that you need to worry about whenever you're looking at buying a home in San Antonio. There are some properties that may look like good deals, but when it's all said and done, they may not be that great of a deal after all. And I kind of dive deep into that situation in this video right here. So thanks for joining, guys. Until the next one, we'll see you there.